Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast of media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, Mathmachine, the Shark, and Stormflame. Today is our 186th episode, and we're discussing the children's books Nighttime for Brigitte, Dinorella, and Edwina, the dinosaur who didn't know she was extinct, for our children's book special episode. So, let's get things started.
Once upon a time, in a far away corner of the internet, there lived a podcast devoted solely to one purpose in life, divulging the secrets of dragonesses across various different kinds of media. Now we're pretty much doing it 24/7, so go nuts, folks.
We have discussed many types of media on the podcast, including movies, television shows, theme park rides, comic books, and novels. But until today, we have never featured children's books, and that's something we are going to change right now. We're actually discussing 3 books, all of which count for the purpose of this podcast, and although this is more of an audible experience rather than a visual one, I'd recommend definitely checking out these books on your own time because all 3 of them have such beautiful and vivid illustrations. These are 3 of the best in my opinion, especially in terms of appearance. The first book we are talking about is Nighttime for Brigitte, written and illustrated by Jim George in 1994. Jim George was actually a Disney animator, having previously worked on both The Rescuers and Beauty and the Beast, amongst many other movies. This means that the art has a very Disney-esque style, while still being its own thing. This really feels like something it would have been a classic short in the 40s. Kind of imagine it to be like that.
I mean, it is funny you mentioned that because, let's just say the plot and the character kind of feel very similar to a certain short animated film by Disney as well, with their own dragon as well.
Yep, and we'll get to the similarities and differences in a little bit, but
Yeah, even I gotta agree that there's some pretty strong similarities here. This would be not out of place in an entire collection of all the early and mid-90s collections like Animaniacs, Tiny Toons, and the like.
I can definitely see why, because it gives off that vibe as well, but definitely with a little bit more of a wholesome vibe to it. The book begins with a drawing of our titular Brigitte watching flowers at night. Brigitte is a dragoness, and spoiler, she's actually the only dragoness we're going to talk about in this episode, giving her a bit of an edge. She has green scales and red hair, with a forked tail that really gives her a unique appearance. I think the best way to describe it is, imagine Nessie from Disney's Ballad of Nessie, if she was drawn like 50 years earlier, and you're kind of halfway there. The book is also written entirely in rhyme, which is a really nice touch. As Brigitte watches the flower, she says to herself, "It is what it is, and that makes it just right." However, Brigitte suddenly hears a noise that sounds like buckets of bolts being tossed in the tank. Brigitte then turns around to see what she thinks is a 6-legged beast, but it only turns out to be a knight riding his horse, and right off the bat, the way Jim George uses the rhymes here is very much like Dr. Seuss in a way. It's so similar to it.
We will not be conducting this podcast in rhyming. We lack the skills and adequate timing.
I tried writing my notes in that way, but it just turned out very boring and dull.
I also like this bit where she sees the knight in the horse and she thinks a 6-legged monster, which, I don't know, I think it's a cute touch, like how dragons view other species, like, if they don't know enough, they actually think they are not even human. They think they're another magical creature or something like that.
Yet, because this guy was a former animator, you can really tell how this guy knows how to draw visual styles, keep it subtle, and there's a lot of little details, which we will point out some of them. Unfortunately, we can't point out all of them, but thankfully this book is available on Internet Archive if you want to check it out in your own time, and I highly recommend it because the Internet Archive is an indelible service.
Yeah, and also on the topic of books that are going to be a pain to describe in the format they came in. Yeah, out of all 3 of these books, 2 of these books are going to be a little difficult to bring an act into because they both have distinct storytelling styles. Here's one of them. Just you wait for the second.
Can't rhyme to save my life, so I won't be rhyming at all in any of these podcast episodes, so don't expect that from me, folks.
The knight and his horse trip on the ground as Brigitte peers at them to see if they are okay, realizing that instead of it being a weird monster, it's just a knight and a horse. Brigitte realized that she saw one previously in her favorite story about Dragonella and Rory, and Just the idea of the fact that dragons have their own fairy tales and myths is such cute world building, and I always love when anything does something like that.
Basically described the knight's whole deal. This guy looks like he graduated the Elden Ring school of bare essentials only, must kill boss. He has a trash can for armor. That you cannot get any more basic than that.
Brigitte then realizes she didn't pay too much attention to the knight in her story, as she liked just reading the part about the two dragons flying off into the sky happily ever after. The knight ends up opening his eye as Brigitte introduces herself, both by saying hello and by making a heart puff and smoke for him. She then introduces herself, quite proudly, and then spells her name quite loudly. The knight introduces himself as Sir Bernardo of Nurney, but then tells her just to call him Bernie, and I will say this, at least things will end better for this Bernie than from the one in Wall-E.
I'm sorry, I can't take a kingdom seriously with a name like Nurney. Like, I hear it in my head, all I can think of is Nurney, Nurney, Nurney. What was their thought process when they came up with the name of this kingdom? Like, tell me this didn't originate in, like, Discworld of all places, because that is the only explanation I can think of. Oh, who the hell am I kidding? It's gonna get me guffawing by the end of this.
Honestly, it sounds like a Games Workshop workaround trademarked a word like Narnia. They have done that before, folks. Look at elves and how they spell dwarves.
Brigitte notes how Bernie dented his can and his horse's chair, only for Bernie to tell her that he's actually wearing armor and his horse has a saddle with a red coffee cup in case a knight or a steed needs a quick pick-me-up. And yeah, you can definitely tell Jim George is having a lot of fun writing this. He then brings attention to his night light to night fight a dragon, which looks like a desk lamp. And if this is produced a couple of years later, I would say this is kind of a reference to Pixar because the lamp looks exactly like Luxo Jr. Brigitte is confused at all of this as Bernie pulls out a book and reads from it, saying how hero types need a hero's journey and slaying the dragon is a hard part. He then tells her to look in the book and gives it to her, and it's at this point where we do have to kind of point out the elephant in the room. This book is basically just the story of the reluctant dragon. However, they do enough of a unique spin on it to where it isn't really bothersome. I feel like they used Reluctant Dragon more as a springboard than anything else.
Yeah, it was at this point I realized, okay, so we have a pear-shaped dragon and a knight who must defeat said dragon to prove how heroic a knight he is. Ah, I get it. This is Lambert the Sheepish Lion.
If only. That would have been a really fun crossover.
Yeah, pay attention to that because the series definitely does take a lot from the Reluctant Dragon, but it actually does kind of its own thing for the most part. It's not exactly unique storytelling wise. Like, I went in expecting a little bit of Reluctant Dragon, and I did, but it also surprised me with how different its overall plot was, and we'll get to why in a moment.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree there because this book takes the basic premise of the Reluctant Dragon, but it does do enough different things to where you can't say, oh, it's just the same story over again, you know? Like I say, there are definitely a lot of similarities, especially later on in the story, but Brigitte reads that knights slay dragons and is shocked by this, asking him, how can a dead dragon make you more knightly? Bernie looks depressed at this, saying that, dragon-wise, my dear, I'm afraid that success is the only way princes can get their princesses. Brigitte is offended at this and blows smoke in the knight's face, saying, perhaps my wings aren't enough for a knight, but they are what they are and that makes them just right.
Clearly, this broad hasn't heard of Monster Hunter yet. You're in for quite a surprise at what people can do with dragons.
Bernie apologizes to Brigitte, saying how he likes having her around and how I'm not very good at my job, as Brigitte then forgives him. The two of them shake hands as Brigitte drops something, only for Bernie to snatch it up, blushing as he does so. He tries to act like nothing is wrong as Brigitte asks what he's doing. He then shows her that he has the flower in his hand and laments how he is a knight who likes flowers, only for Brigitte to say how she likes it as well. Bernie laments how others think he's weird for liking flowers, as Brigitte eventually says, if I were a knight, I'd be a kind that likes flowers, as Bernie is amazed at this.
It's really easy to see why they like flowers, especially whenever they're asking whatever they're talking to tastes like.
Yep, those guys would definitely be more than welcome in this story. There's also a really fun little detail about the illustrations here. During this entire sequence, Bernie's horse looks so dazed and confused at all of this that it's such a subtle little detail because if you're reading the story, you're either concerned about the dialogue or about Bridget and the Knight. But I do like that Jim George took the time to do that little detail. And there's a little bit more that we'll talk about later on.
Clearly, this isn't a French Knight because the French Knight would absolutely be all over the flower detail. And second of all, this definitely makes me want to give a second look through over the book because those kinds of details are definitely some of those things that a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing if you're not paying too much attention.
Flowers are then hit by fire, burning them to a crisp. Bernie flees from the fire, falling down as Bridget annoyingly realizes that it's my big brother Bartlett, and Bartlett is here to do one thing. He's going to teach everybody how to do the Bartlett. But wait, no, that's another character from the 90s. Sorry. Instead, Bartlett is actually a dragon that is twice as large as Bridget, has gigantic wings, and is much more muscular. He yells at Bernie to get away from my sister, as Bernie cowers. Bridget looks annoyed at her brother as he takes to the air and begins shooting more fire at Bernie, nearly burning him and destroying the flowers again. Bridget gets enraged at this, yelling at him to stop as Bartlett is too busy saving his sister to listen. Bridget eventually has enough of this and finally gets her brother to listen to him by burning his tail, which really raises a lot of questions for how dragons communicate in this world.
Yeah, thank goodness Bartlett didn't actually burn the guy, because otherwise he would have absolutely lived up to his name and burned.
Yeah, as Lud was saying that, kind of surprising that he actually got burned because, the usual agreement between this type of mythology is that dragons are usually immune to flames and lava, but, well, we know at least in this world that's not the case.
Bridget then tells her brother that Bernie is what he is, and he's a very nice knight, and says that if she needs to be saved, she'll ask him. Bridget then breathes hearts at Bartlett to show their love for each other as he trudges off in annoyance. Bernie then tells Bridget that he still needs to slay a dragon, but he can't slay her as she's a friend, and he can't slay Bartlett because he's both too tough and he's her brother. He laments how other knights would have slayed a dragon by now, and how if he returns home empty-handed, the rest of the kingdom would mock him. Bridget looks saddened at this, as the pair sit down and say nothing to each other. Bernie then gives Bridget back her flower, saying how, "You are what you are, and you're very lucky, my friend." Bernie then says he has to leave as they're waiting for me, or for somebody that I ought to be.
Also kinda interesting because the conversation they just had kinda implies that Brigitte will be not completely opposed to the knight slaying her brother.
It's one of those things that really makes you think if it was meant to be a little bit more of an adult. If it is, that's pretty good on Jim George. Bridget then realizes that she can't let Bernie get laughed at like that, then comes up with a suggestion. But before she can say that, the robot from Weenie Hut Jr.'s rolls into frame and says, "I have an idea. Why not fake a fight?" Bridget says that she'll go along with Bernie, and they'll fool his friends by only pretending that she was slayed and is dead. The illustration of Bridget in this shot in particular is really cute. This probably is the best drawing of her in the book, and that's saying something because the art style in this is just beautiful. Bernie is excited at this, saying how the royal family is distracted. Bridget will sneak out through the back as she continues to come up with ideas. One little detail that is such a clever thing that they put in, the horse looks at both of them in confusion. Again, it's such a simple detail that I'm so glad that they put in because it really works out. Bernie manages to make a sled for Bridget to lie on as they go towards the castle, singing a song together. They then go past a castle that is built on trees and bedrock that, in a really clever touch, looks exactly like the Cinderella Castle from Walt Disney's adaptation, which, knowing Jim George's past, that's a really nice wink and nod. Bridget asks if that's Nirni, as Bernie quietly says no and they move on. The pair go past a second castle that is very MC Escher inspired with the way it's on spindly legs and it has geometry that goes to nowhere, which, again, pretty good topic to introduce to kids, that kind of stuff. Bridget asks if that's his castle, as Bernie says no, it's still half an hour away.
First of all, long, spindly long. Second, take an upside down left. That's the MC Escher stairs. 2 internet references right off the bat because of that castle. You're welcome.
When they eventually arrive at Nerni, the castle is visibly falling apart, with the walls falling over and it literally being held up by wooden planks, which is such a funny visual, but it actually does tie into the story as well. Bernie points out all of these flaws as Brigitte doesn't care, pointing out that at least there's a flower in the window. Bernie says that he put it there himself, and he nearly got caught by the princess when he gave it some water. Bernie continues to talk about how the castle is falling apart and needs repair, but Brigitte doesn't care about this, looking at the flower he planted in wonder.
Your kingdom is named the dumbest thing a kingdom could possibly be named after. And it looks like it's in literal shambles. How exactly is anybody going to take this place seriously?
The pair then go up to the castle gates where the king's commander peers over and asks what they want. In a cute little detail, he looks exactly like the guard from The Wizard of Oz. "You can't see the wizard? Not no way, not no how." He looks exactly like that guy, and I think that was an intentional reference, and it's a really cute one. Bernie tells the commander that he brought a dragon as Brigitte begins playing dead. A group of citizens all comes out and begins cheering for Bernie, throwing confetti in the air and having a giant band. One says how he'll marry the princess now, as Brigitte winks at him. Bernie and Brigitte are then brought inside of the castle. However, the king, the queen, and the princess all begin berating the appearance of Brigitte, saying how she doesn't look like a proper dragon because her wings are too small, and the princess says that green is too green, the ugliest green I have ever seen, and what happens next is we pan over to Patrick Star. Green.
The only person I know who hates green as much as this queen is Rarity from MLP. Green, that's an awful color. Oh.
This absolutely gives them the missing link vibes. Like, there are people trying to impress people who want nothing to do with them, or at the very least don't give two shits about them. Like, this absolutely was reflected here. I wouldn't be surprised if that film took inspiration from this one.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but yeah, you can kind of see a kind of similarity to it, but I think that's a little bit of a stretch, personally.
The royal family looks and acts way too specifically to the point where I think that these are people that Jim George knew and is parodying, probably animation executives or something.
I didn't think about that, but judging from how they're drawn and almost like a Mad Magazine caricature-esque, I definitely could see that now, that they're actually meant to be parodies of people who they are, we'll probably never know, but regardless.
I kind of find funny how this royal family is so picky that, oh, it's green, it's ugly, and all of that, because they're looking at something they think it's a dead body. So it's like, wow, you're so picky, even dead bodies have to be perfect to you.
Bernie hears this and eventually has enough. He tells them, "You are what you are, and that is all right, but I am what I am, and I am not a knight." And aside from quoting Popeye the Sailor Man, it's a really good sentiment as well. If you notice, the king's crown has a tiny little hanger on the end of it with a to-do list hanging off of it. It's one of those details that is just so clever. It feels like something that was meant to be from like an Fleischer animated show or something like that. That the king literally has hangers on his crown for all the stuff for him to do. He tells Brigitte that they are leaving. She then wakes up, beginning to puff smoke from her nostrils. She then stands up and glares at the royal family before her. Bernie and the horse all walk out of the castle. They sing their song as they leave, with Bernie removing his knight armor, and thankfully it does not operate under Ghost and Goblins rules, because that would be a little bit too adult for this book. The pair make it at a crossroads, as Brigitte asks Bernie what he will do now, as Bernie says, "I know who I am, way down in my heart. It may not be much, but at least that's a start." The book ends with the two of them going their separate ways, a la Journey, but they agree to meet up with each other in the valley when the moon is half full. The moral of the story is they are who they are, and that made them just right, which is a really nice sentiment, and this book in particular is such a charming one that it's kind of a shame. This is probably the most obscure of the three books we are talking about today, because this never got reprinted. I can't seem to find copies of it anywhere, at least easily available. It is on Internet Archive, so at least it has been saved for future generations. But I am surprised because this book is such a charming little number I'm surprised like word of mouth didn't even help it.
Yeah, I do have to agree that this book is criminally underrated and a little rough around the edges, but it's definitely one of those books that people should definitely show their kids more if they're able to find it or able to look it up on an internet archive. Such a tale ends on an interesting note of other dragon and dinosaur damsels of which to do.
The second book we are discussing is Dinorella, written by Pamela Duncan Edwards and illustrated by our creative partner Henry Cole. As the name suggests, it's a parody of Cinderella. Pamela Duncan Edwards is a very, very talented author, as well as judging from this book. She has the most sparse Wikipedia page I have ever seen of anyone. It is literally just 2 sentences, and it has no information about her. I am very surprised at that. Getting back to this book is very unique in how it really uses a lot of alliteration with a lot of D words in every sentence, making it very, very, very fun to read out loud. And yes, I did try writing all my notes in alliteration, and I got to maybe 6 of them before I ran out of steam, so we're not going to go to that right now.
Yep. You could say the animated adaptation of this book will air on channel D.
Yep. Well, it would, except for the fact that DDD would be upset because he was not in it.
A difficult duty, for sure. But we dare not dwell on disdainful and disappointing displays and dote more on dainty, delectable dinosaur damsels and their delightful derrieres.
When asked why we don't do alliterations with D's, all I can say is we don't do that.
The book begins with our protagonist, Dinorella, and her 2 sisters, Dora and Doris, in their dinosaur den. Dinorella is a purple-scaled plesiosaur with black stripes and a shawl around her head. Dora and Doris don't do anything but just lay around the house, while Dinorella, true to the fairy tale, has to do all the chores for them.
Right, first I thought she was a sauropod, but alright. Also her sisters, you can tell they're different. They're not her biological sisters because they're hadrosaurs, 2 different ones. The same family of duck-billed dinosaurs as Parasaurolophus.
It really works out good, and especially with her appearance later on when she does get to go to the party, which we will get to in a second. After a montage of Dinorella working for them all day long, Dora and Doris begin to make fun of her. Obviously, what Dinorella should do next, she should give them alphabet soup and make it special. Get a job.
Yeah, one thing to note about this, Dinorella's delightful sauropod appearance. She and her sisters are pretty much buck naked. Like, no joke. Apron and other selected stuff aside, like, she pretty much does everything around the house in just that apron, just her boots, and just her gloves. I mean, probably like a few confused looks, but probably nothing too crazy along the lines of, that's weird.
I mean, in this case, there are dinosaurs and all of that. In this case, I don't think there will be much issue if they were, like you said, not wearing anything or barely wearing something. But there's a page later on this book where I will say, oh, they really show that in a children's book. All right. We'll discuss about it when we get to it.
One day, the trio get a card that says there is a dinosaur dance at Duke Dudley's. Dora and Doris get ready for the dance, but tell Dinorella that she can't go, as she doesn't have any dinosaur jewels and is too dull before they leave. Dinorella is saddened at this before the Fiery Dactyl arrives, which, in a neat reference, she's dressed exactly the same as Verna Felton's fairy godmother. The Fairy Dactyl gives Dinorella a beautiful new dress, a new hairstyle, and jewels to wear, which actually gives her a 1950s beauty appearance, which actually comes up later on in the book as well.
This is the part I was talking about, because in this page where the stepsisters are changing, they are in their underwear. Let's just say that one of them, we are seeing her from the backside, and we get a good look at a full moon.
Yep, amazing they got away with that.
Feels like they got away with a lot of things in the 90s, which I miss it so much, and this book is definitely an interesting time capsule because of that.
Dinorella's enhanced appearance is a really beautiful one in my opinion, especially with the combination of pinks and purples. It really makes her stand out in a book with a more duller color scheme, which I think was the point. Dinorella then arrives at Duke Dudley's den, which, in a fun twist, it's not a big fairy tale castle, it's a 1950s style diner. However, Dinorella then hears a deafening din. It turns out to be Dudley being kidnapped by a Dinocus, who is actually a greaser type and is biting his tail, threatening to eat him, which, okay, for a book written for a very young target audience, that is some pretty dark stuff that the dinosaurs still try to eat each other with the carnivores. That's one of those things that you don't really think about, especially in books like this, but wow, I give them credit for actually going there.
Right, the dinosaur's name is pronounced Deinonychus, and it's the raptor family, which they almost appeared in Jurassic Park, but this whole 50s style thing kind of surprised me when I first read this book.
I can see why, because again, it's something that even from the cover, you wouldn't really think this has a 1950s aesthetic, but I like that they do that just because it gives it such a unique flavor to it.
Yeah, this was definitely something that not a lot of children's books do nowadays, if you really think about it. Like, this doesn't exactly appear to be commonplace, even when it comes to more modern books. Like, you look at stuff like at the Elephant and Cow book made by Mo Williams, more on that later, and you don't exactly see stuff like this anymore. And also, back on the Deinonychus thing, that apparently the velociraptors, quote unquote, in the Jurassic Park film are actually Deinonychus and not, Velociraptor.
Well, I was a bit surprised about the 50s diner aesthetic that they went with for this book. Looking back at the cover, I really shouldn't be, because Dinorella is dressed in a 50s style scene queen sort of outfit. It's that same sort of haircut, glasses, clothing. It is very reminiscent of that era, so actually good on them. They sort of did allude to this while just making her look good in general.
Exactly, and the art style really does help because this has kind of a sketchy art style, which makes a lot of the background characters look more, shall we say, darker and grimmer, which compared to Dinorella's color scheme really makes her stand out. Dinorella is in shock at what's happening to Duke Dudley before deciding to do something to stop the evil dinosaur. She then begins throwing dirt balls at him, roaring to drop the Duke. The raptor yells who called him a dummy, only to see Dinorella on the hill. However, from such a distance, only her diamonds are visible underneath the moonlight. The dinosaur screams, thinking that she is a demon, a word that I certainly was not excited to read in a book like this, as Dinorella then throws one of her diamonds at the villain. It manages to hit him square in the mouth, knocking a tooth out as he flees, and Guy took a diamond to his snout. He's lucky he only lost one tooth.
Dude, you just got hit in the tooth by a diamond, and it didn't even break. How are you just this scared? I can forgive the greaser for being a little bit freaked out by someone like Dinorella popping up out of nowhere and looking like that, but yeah, still, getting hit with a diamond like that definitely raises a few eyebrows.
My favorite little detail in this book, and God, it's full of so many little details. When the dinosaur is attempting to eat the Duke, if you look closely, you can actually see ketchup, mustard, and pickles on his tail, like it was a pre-made hamburger.
Yeah, like I say, such subtle little visual jokes like that are always appreciated, and we're going to get to another really good one in a couple of seconds. All the other dinosaurs begin screaming in terror, thinking that a demon has arrived, as Dudley roars at them for being so foolish. He tells them that it's a dinosaur from a damsel, and whoever it belongs to shall be his darling. The fairy dactyl arrives and asks where Dinorella is, only for Doris and Dora to mock her. Dinorella then climbs down from the dune, as Dudley is in awe over her beauty, noting that she is also missing a diamond. We then get a page with no text as we see Dudley give the diamond to Dinorella, who blushes at this. But that's not the real reason why this page is so amazing. The real reason this page is so amazing is because in the background, we see Dora and Doris's shocked expressions, and it is some of the funniest drawings I have ever seen. Just their looks of horror and shock. It's a subtle little detail, but it's something that really is so funny.
Yeah, if you haven't noticed, folks, the diamond is the glass slipper I guess they couldn't give dinosaurs shoes, despite the Deinonychus having one. I did actually laugh pretty hard when I saw their shocked reactions of Dinorella being the darling.
This moment to this very day gets me. I looked at that scene so many times as a kid. Keeps getting funnier with time. Like just the sheer act of them in the back, like going like, ah!
Yeah, you can definitely tell why, especially because the art style is so charming in this book. It really makes little details like that stand out more. Dudley then takes Dinorella into his Cadillac convertible car as the pair dance off together, with the book ending with Doris and Dora yelling out "drat" in anger. That's it for Dinorella. It seems to be better remembered than Nighttime for Brigitte in any case, and it really was a lot of fun. It's such a little subtle thing, and I think it's really enjoyable. Like, if you have kids and you read this to them, they are going to get a hoot out of it. Partially because of the alliteration, partially because the art style really is just so charming. Like, these two really were at the top of their game.
Once I saw the car, I know where this actually takes place. It doesn't take place in the past, but in our future, as it takes after dinosaurs and Cadillacs. But where the dinosaurs evolved to be human intelligence, presumably mankind went extinct.
Okay, first of all, that is a very interesting kind of future that I hope I get reincarnated as. Second of all, I grew up with this book a lot as a kid. When I picked it up and looked at it, it was definitely a trip down memory lane for sure. And also, I know a lot of you will probably look at the ending and be like, wow, that's just kind of suboptimal. But to that, I say, if you knew the actual story of Cinderella and how that ultimately ended, I can assure you, you'll be looking at this in a better light from that point forward.
This book really is such a charming one. That is going to lead us to the third and final book we are discussing today, which is Edwina, the Dinosaur Who Didn't Know She Was Extinct by Mo Williams. Mo Williams started out as an animator for MTV Bumpers, back when MTV meant something and wasn't just the let's rerun ridiculousness 50,000 times a day channel. He also did animation for Sesame Street, then went on to make both Sheep in the Big City and codenamed Kids Next Door for Cartoon Network, and from there, he actually retired from animation altogether to become a children's book author, something that he is insanely successful at. No shame for Sheep in the Big City and Kids Next Door and that, but he has sold so many copies, and he is so critically beloved that really, that was probably the best decision he ever could have made, deciding to go into children's literature, because as we're going to see, this book is extremely charming.
Yeah, I will stand by that. I was definitely one of the kids next door, so to speak. Saw the series' eventual end for the most part. Yeah, looking at most of his book, Elephant and Piggy, the pigeon books, those were pretty adorable. And this one that we're about to cover, honestly, in the long run, that was a pretty good thing. There was also Nuffle Bunny. That was definitely an enjoyable thing, even though I was a little too old for that. I still can definitely look back on his work and say that man made a pretty good decision. And also, one of his books got made into an animated movie, so hey, he's not completely out of the animation game.
Yeah, I can definitely see why, because he really is such a talented individual. In a way, I'm glad that he found his calling, because this is really a fantastic book. And he's also famous for doing his books Don't Let the Pigeon, which is don't let the pigeon ride the bus, don't let the pigeon eat a hot dog, don't let the pigeon take a bath. They're really, really charming and actually really well written and funny for the target audience. You can tell that he just has a certain type of humor that really clicks. If you've ever seen Sheep in the Big City, that basically was a modern day Rocky and Bullwinkle, he really has that kind of humor in everything he does, and it works out perfectly. The book begins with a shot of people walking along the street, with Edwina sticking out amongst them. Edwina is a green-scaled dinosaur with an old-timey woman's hat and pearls. The narration continues by saying how everyone knows who Edwina was, saying she is the dinosaur who plays with the neighborhood kids as we see her using her body as a slide for them. The narration continues to say that Edwina is the dinosaur who always helps out others, as we see her using her height to unscrew a light bulb. We then see her cross old ladies across the street by carrying them, then her baking cookies for a group of construction workers. Everyone dances with Edwina, as the narration says that everybody loves her, with the one exception of Reginald Van Hooby Dooby, a small boy who looks at her in annoyance.
Well, I can tell those construction workers who get cookies from her probably give her tons of whistles in her direction. There is a thing I don't really understand since I never grew up with this book. Why is nobody questioning why there's a dinosaur amongst them?
Can we just talk about how genuinely kind and sweet a dinosaur Edwina ultimately is? This is a gal who literally spends most of her day helping people because of her size, generally being a nice and courteous person. If she was a drug, my teeth would be falling out by the second. Like, it is just so adorable. And she herself is adorable. In spite of her possibly being the only dinosaur in this freaking universe, she just does all she can to help people and just ultimately be a genuine and charming person. And I, for one, am all for that kind of thing.
Yep, she really is such a charming and warm protagonist, which she kind of isn't the protagonist of the book, but she is a reoccurring figure, and yeah, Edwina is probably one of the sweetest, nicest, honestly, most kindest characters we have talked about on the podcast in a very long time. Reginald storms into a school as the narration says how Reginald knew everything about everything and likes giving reports in class, with today's topic being things that are extinct. We see him in a classroom with a rather poorly drawn drawing of a T-Rex that's dead, with the title, Dinosaurs, Totally Extinct, as both the students and the teachers looks confused at this. The other classmates bring up that Edwina is not extinct and how she bakes chocolate chip cookies for them. Even the teacher agrees with their students, saying how Edwina is baking for them right now. They then all run out of the class, where Edwina shows up to give them all chocolate chip cookies as Reginald fumes in anger.
All of his arguments pretty much fall flat because, sorry, but there's a living, tangible thing in your universe that pretty much that confirms all of your theories. I can just imagine Homer being there and being like, "What did you see, Lisa?" "Yeah, but what did you just saw?"
Nice one.
I'm going to have to correct you there, Reginald. First of all, it's critically endangered / nearly extinct. And second of all, yeah, I got to agree here. Like, there is a living, breathing dinosaur who not only is a great public service person, but also bakes you cookies standing right there. And you're just going to be like, nope, don't see shit. I know you're opening your eyes, but are they really open enough to not acknowledge dinosaur right there?
Yeah, this is what I was talking about. This kid, Reginald, is the only one somewhat questioning why is there a dinosaur, but he's not really questioning it. He's just trying to say dinosaurs are extinct, end of. Which, judging by the book's title, you would have sworn everyone is the one questioning why is Edwina not extinct. Try to tell her she is meant to be extinct, but she doesn't get it. That's my thing about this book.
I like how the general idea of the town can best be summed up as don't care, didn't ask, plus got cookies.
Would you be upset about a dinosaur woman who gives cookies to everybody and helps everybody out? No. So stop wrecking everyone's fun, Reginald. Reginald then goes home and angrily brushes his teeth and goes to bed, saying how he'll prove dinosaurs are extinct and thereby make Edwina disappear. We then cut to the next day where Reginald is handing out flyers about dinosaurs and how they are all extinct, only for the townsfolk to not read them and instead decide to use them as paper hats and paper airplanes, which, pretty good use of them, townsfolk. You guys got spunked. We then cut to Reginald protesting in front of Edwina with a sign reading, "This is not happening," as Edwina just ignores him and buys an ice cream, and obviously he was too small to see, but we then see Plankton protesting next to him with another sign, "I am not a roach."
And then Plastic comes along, sees the sign, and is like, ooh, the circus is in town. And just keeps walking along the way.
The narration says, when protesting didn't work, he tried everything he could, as we see the boy use a one-man band, ringing a gong, and even doing a tap dance routine to try and convince people, only to be ignored. Reginald then begins crying that no one will listen to him, only for a voice to say that they'll listen to him. It turns out to be Edwina, who is doing such a kind and sweet little smile here that you really can tell why she's such a lovely character.
Okay, first of all, when I hear that, all I can think of is, and that's why dinos are dead. The person who he is trying to convince everyone is straight up in the ground, 6 feet under, is the only one willing to take the time to listen to him and understand why he's ultimately, so hung up about this.
The next page has Reginald dragging her off to his classroom, as we then cut to the classroom, which has many drawings of Edwina on the outside of it, as well as a drawing of Mo Williams' other big character, the pigeon, from the aforementioned Don't Let the Pigeon Do Something books. Cute little reference there. Reginald explains to Edwina that dinosaurs are extinct, pulling off very hilarious faces as he does so. Mo Williams really did not lose any of his touch when it came to character design and facial expressions, because these are just hilarious here. He then finishes off by pretending to be dead, as we then see Edwina with a shell-shocked expression on her face. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Edwina's face here is the best one in this entire book.
I see your point on Edwina's face here, but Reginald, the pointing up in the eyes. Don't get me wrong. Edwina's shock face, be like, but that Reginald face, though. Just saying.
Reginald continues to smirk at her, as Edwina is still horrified at this, as the narration continues to say that everything Reginald told her made sense. Edwina was supposed to be extinct. However, the next page is really where everything gets twisted up, because the next page, has her simply smashing through the wall and frolicking through flowers. As the narration says, she simply does not care about it. Which, yep, you go, Edwina. You show him.
Yeah, what did this kid expect it will happen? She will just pop out of existence?
Well, he is pretty young, so most likely.
Yeah, I like how Edwina hears all of that and just doesn't give two shits about it and just breaks out of the wall. Like, head empty.
I know exactly what I was expecting after the whole, he gave the speech and Edwina was shocked bit. It was not, she just didn't care. That was a great way that they delivered it, and it was hilarious seeing that page turn to that.
Yep, it just shows again how talented Mo Williams is, that he still has such a perfect knack for comedic timing. Reginald is stunned at this and thinks for a few moments before deciding to leave to join her, as the narration says that Reginald didn't care either as he frolics out as well. And what's funny is, when Edwina leaves the classroom, she leaves the classic cartoon impact on the brick wall, which when Reginald leaves the classroom, he does it through the impact that Edwina left on the wall, which actually is a really cute gag. The book ends with her baking cookies for Reginald as they both smile warmly at each other. And yeah, this was a really simple, charming, and funny book. Mo Williams, again, don't want to keep sounding like a broken record here, but this guy really knows his stuff. It's no wonder he sold like almost 50 million copies of his books, because this guy really knows his stuff.
Right here may look simplistic on the surface and almost like a nothing burger ending, but there's a lot more layers to it than you can imagine. Like, this is basically Edwina shattering all his conceived notions, well-laid plan. She just sat there while he gave an entire lecture on why she was ultimately extinct. Or at that point, she just said, okay, so what? Figuratively and literally broke down those walls that were holding back Reginald from having a enjoyable, fulfilled life. I think that's a pretty clever way to cap off a book. Like, don't get me wrong, Brigitte's one was a nice little thing and ultimately spun the whole Reluctant Dragon. Dinorella, I love the book to pieces. It's a nostalgic classic for a reason, but yeah, the ending, it was cute, it was blunt. I mean, it's not really going to stand up to this. Second, there's a nice little Easter egg where at the beginning, Edwina sets down a plate of cookies in like the book's binding, and then at the end of the book, it shows Reginald actually taking that cookie, meaning he's pretty much accepted that Edwina is a real factual thing in spite of evidence saying otherwise. Like, really had to put that much detail in a children's book about a dinosaur who gives people cookies and is just a genuinely sweet and adorable person.
You really hit the nail on the head with the implied moral of it, which I love when they do that, where it could be read on two different levels. I'm like, a simple level and a level with a little bit more behind it, which again shows what a good author he is. Overall, I actually liked all three books identically. It's really hard to say which one is my favorite because they all do different things. They're not trying to tell the same story with the same message.
I think that the best way that I've come to describe each of these books is Brigitte is my favorite of the three because it has this good combination of art and rhyme scheme and just overall story. Stuff like Dinorella was my favorite to look at. The designs in that are just the best by far. They're so creative. They're so engaged. They're so unique. You will never see another child's book that looks anything like this. Edwina is just the sweetest thing. This is probably the most charming child's book I've ever seen in my life, short of something like a Seuss book. Each one of them does its own thing, but they are just so good at each of their own things.
Exactly. They all have, really all three of them, I would recommend if you have like a young child and want to read them something really good, I highly recommend this. It's got to be better than whatever AI slop books are plugging up Amazon.com right now. Definitely find these books if you haven't because they really are all very charming and they have really good messages.
True that. For every dino's wobbly bottom out there, we're probably bound to get something that's just bound to be even worse.
That's actually going to lead to the question of the week, which is, what is your favorite children's book? And by children's book, we do mean books more in this vein. So more, shall we say, like adult children's novels and that probably will not count for the purposes of this question just because we haven't really talked about those kind of books. My answer is going to be one that probably is going to be one of the most obvious ones. So at the same time, is going to be a really, really good one. And that is going to be a childhood classic, which is The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Now, it's done by an artist named Eric Carle, and this man's art style is probably some of the most simplistic yet sweetest art style you will ever see. The way this man draws, and he did a ton of other stuff than just Hungry Caterpillar, by the way. If you haven't seen his other work and his paintings, check them out because they are things of beauty. Like, it's so simplistic, but sometimes that's all you need. Just the art style alone is such a wonder. There's no wonder why it was such a high-selling children's book, and it still is to this day. It's such a simplistic story that at the same time is such a fun one, and the whole thing of putting the punch cards in the book for the kids to play with it, that is just a work of creative genius right there. It's such a simplistic, easy to understand book, and yet at the same time, there's something about it, there's something that is just so charming with. There's a reason that this book is held up and hundreds of thousands of other books that probably were written in the 1970s haven't, because there's just something about it as a whole that really just feels so nice. And it's such a simplistic story about the caterpillar, of course, being hungry, eating a lot, then he eats a green leaf to feel better, and then becomes a beautiful butterfly. It's such a simplistic story, and saying what it is like that makes it sound so, pedestrian, but it really isn't. It really is a nice thing. So that's going to be my pick, is going to be The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Let's see, Angron, what would your pick be?
That's going to be a little bit of a tricky one because much as I've read many, and I do mean many, children's books when I was still like an elementary schooler, not too many speak to me other than maybe Dinorella. For the sake of effort and hopefully the try, I'm probably going to have to give Big Bad Wolf is Good a little bit of a shot. This came out well before the bad guys, so this is one of the few times where Big Bad Wolf actually went straight up good. Like, the art style is pretty cute and whatnot. There aren't too many details like the other books that we mentioned on here. Even Eric Carle kind of trumps it in that regard, but yeah, this is one of those books that I definitely would highly recommend. It's one of those things that show that a character can in fact change, even though his past is a little bit difficult to overcome, especially with his whole reputation. Yeah, if you're looking to step into something where you're trying to get your kid to understand that despite a rough path, that doesn't mean you can't really change, and if you want them to not start with bad guys just yet, then this is definitely a good book to do that with. That's going to be my unconventional choice, but conventional choice, again, Dinorella. I love this book too much. It's stylistically great. It's pretty much a dinosaur retelling of Cinderella. There's a lot of details in it that I definitely enjoyed combing through upon a second look through. Those stepsisters' faces just give me life every time I see it. It's so amazing to look at. And also, the story is very cute too. It's basically Cinderella, but a dinosaur 50s sort of thing going on. I mean, what more can you really say about it other than that? It's Cinderella, but dinos, and it's just so charming. I love it to bits. And so yeah, those are going to be my two choices for children's books, because my other choices are going to be Magic Treehouse, which might be a little bit advanced, but yeah, gonna stick with those two.
Yeah, those are excellent choices right there. I could definitely see why you'd make them. Let's see, Matt, what would your pick be?
I'm going with a bit more of a classic myself. It's going to be a Dr. Seuss book. While The Grinch is my favorite Seuss story, it's not my favorite book, and that actually does matter because I love the way that this particular book is done up. And it is probably, if not one of the most iconic of Seuss's books, particularly because it is a very well-known opening. It's so well-known. I could just say the lines and everyone will instantly picture this in their head. I am Sam. Sam I am. And boy, do I love green eggs and ham. The way that he did this book is so minimal and yet so impactful. Every page is just so charming and endearing, and the simple rhyming scheme just helps get you into the book. The way that this was done was brilliant in its simplicity. What I find hilarious is this is so well known and beloved. They made a Netflix series out of it, and it was somehow good. Seuss worlds are just that engaging that you can turn a short children's book that has maybe like 50 unique words in it into a full 12 episode series, and it still has that level of charm. Seuss is a genius, and all of his books stand out as some of the best children's books of all time, but particularly Green Eggs and Ham.
That is a great choice there because, again, all the books he wrote really just have held up so well. It's so easy to see just why they have lasted so long. It's because this guy was such a genius, because he actually said part of the reason why he did children's literature, he was so bored of the formulaic children's books that were given to kids, like the Dick and Jane books that were so terminally boring and unfun, that he wanted to make something that children would not want to put down. And he succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, because how many people know him compared to Dick and Jane? And no, I do not mean the Jim Carrey movie Fun with Dick and Jane. That is very different. Let's see, Shark, what would your pick be?
I mean, like, while I did read many books when I was younger, most of them were more, I wouldn't say advanced, but it weren't like the children books like we covered today and all of that. The closest unique one I can remember one, however, it's a really simple one, honestly. It was simply called Rain. And it was a whole gimmick about the colors, that it starts like raining and it says something like, oh, it's raining over the red roof, raining over the red apple. And it goes, it's like, oh, it's raining over the orange car, it's raining over the yellow flower. And at the end, it stopped raining and there's a rainbow. And I know, very simplistic, very, very like short, but all right, yeah, for a young children's books, it's fine. It's a good way to teach all the colors, and yeah, I mean, it's a fun one. The visuals I remember being fun a lot. Yeah, because of the very simple name, Rain. It's like really, really hard to find out about.
That is a classic choice right there. I really like, just the different varying answers we're getting, because it just shows how we all had different like childhood experiences that still stick with us in such a way. Let's see, Storm, what would your pick be?
Right. This is going to be difficult for me because I know I did read a lot of them, but I can't remember them. A book I read in primary school. I'm not sure how obscure this story is, but it's about a turtle in Africa who dreams about a tree that can grow any type of fruit you want. I mean, like every kind of fruit. And all the animals go search for this, but because of some obstacles, they trip, hit, or even get trapped in a pond. But the turtle is the only one that could get through all those obstacles and finds this tree. But he shares all the fruit to the animals who try to find it.
That sounds really interesting. It's actually a book I have not heard of before this, but it sounds really interesting. I might have to check it out just because the art style looks really nice.
Brief mention to another book, One Kitten for Kim. That book I also remember a little bit, and it has quite a hilarious ending. It's basically a kid trying to give away his kittens because his mom's like, we have too many. So he keeps one, but gives away the others, and I'm not going to give away how it ends.
That is now leading to the patent pending Dragoness Scale, where we are ranking not 1, not 2, but 3 characters today, which would be pretty interesting. I'll go first, and this was a really tough one. I know I seem to say that every week, but this week I really do mean it because all 3 characters were just so good. My first inkling was really just to give all 3 of them perfect scores, but I found I really could not do that. I really wanted to, don't get me wrong, they're just great, but maybe one of them will get a perfect score. We'll see which one. First, for Brigitte, I am going to give her a 9 out of 10 because I love the design. I love the art style. She really is great. The world building is great. The characterization is great. And the fact that she has such a wonderful character speaks volumes. The only reason I can't give her a perfect score is just because I feel it really more has to do with the story and being just a little derivative of the Reluctant Dragon, which Reluctant Dragon is great. That guy got a real good high score as well. Only male dragon on the podcast, by the way, but he got a really good score. But with that being said, I just feel that if they just did a little bit more, she'd get a little higher, but still a very high score of 9 out of 10. As for Dinorella, I am going to give her an 8 out of 10. And the reason for that is because I feel like she should have had just a little bit more agency in the book. She does save the Duke, and I really do like that they do that. They make her way more proactive than the original Cinderella. That is such a well done detail in that, and how the prince discovers it's her is really unique. But at the same time, she should have been able to do a little bit more, like do the scene of Dora and Doris seeing Dinorella in her dress, and they don't know who it is, and everyone is stunned at her beauty. Something like that would have given her a little bit more of an edge, which means that my 10 out of 10 score is actually going to go to Edwina, the dinosaur who didn't know she was extinct, because, I'm sorry, what do you want me to say? It's a perfect design. The characterization is really good. She's not the protagonist of the book, but she doesn't really have to be in a way. And just the message of the book, and as mentioned earlier, the comedic timing of her discovering she was extinct, but then just deciding she doesn't care about it, is perfection. I really cannot give her anything less than a 10 out of 10 because I could see almost no flaws with her. So that's going to be my score for all 3 of them is 9, 8, and 10, which still really high scores all around, which shows just how well written these books are. Again, definitely pick up these books instead of, oh, let's read our kids about Funko Pop Seinfeld tonight, because they're all really well done. Let's see, Angron, what would you give them?
Yeah, I'm kind of going to do a similar thing, except the order is going to be a little twisted around. Brigitte is, yeah, don't get me wrong. She's great. She's got a lot more moxie and a lot more confidence compared to the Reluctant Dragon. She doesn't need an insult to ultimately get riled up and ultimately just jump into action because of that. I can't exactly say that anything else is really in her favor. That doesn't happen with the book naturally. Like, yeah, she's smart, she's clever, the design somewhat helps. I'll be perfectly honest, I see her and she looks like that one lizard. Her and everybody else in that book looks like that one lizard from The Rescuers Down Under, which he did work on. I don't know, it's something about this here that ultimately makes me feel like there needed to be a little bit more uniqueness. It's not a bad thing, mind you. She's still getting an 8 out of 10 in my book. Yeah, it's just something like that really doesn't. She's basically the Reluctant Dragon, but a little more buff, a little more clever, and just the ending of the book certainly has a little weird ending, but I didn't hate it. But yeah, she's still getting an 8 out of 10 in my book. Now for Dinorella, here's where things get interesting. This is a nostalgic childhood classic. I grew up with this book a lot. I read it a lot when I was a kid. To this day, it still remains in there in my mind about all the other books. Richard Scarry, Eric Carle, Dr. Seuss. Yeah, the book has a little more style than substance, which isn't a bad thing, mind you. It's basically a dinosaur retelling of Cinderella. Yeah, say that again. It's a dinosaur retelling of Cinderella. Bear in mind, this is pretty much Cinderella, but a big old honkin' sauropod in a semi-50s and 90s setting. It's practically perfect. And the character herself, yeah, while there could have been a little bit more character, kind of felt for her a little more than Brigitte. Nostalgia aside, she does ultimately suffer at the hand. She takes her licks, she's strong, she has more agency, she ultimately takes a stand against the Deinonychus. I will admit there are a few little plot things, but just like she's amazing. Her design is unique. It's darling. It's spectacular. So yeah, it is for that reason I am going to give her a 9 out of 10. What holds her back from a 10 is, again, the substance kind of giving way to the style just a little bit. And the fact that I think that her design as a disguised princess is a little weird. Do not hate it. I just think it kind of makes her look a little off. 9 out of 10 for the most part. Edwina, meanwhile, yeah, she definitely earned that 10 out of 10. She's a genuinely nice person. She makes cookies. She helps out people. She took the time to listen to somebody who basically was describing her own species extinction, and that wake-up call snaps one of the most stick-butt kind of characters out of his delusions and just helps him live more, helps him be a better person. And like the book is as good as Dinorella, strictly from a style viewpoint. Yeah, Mo definitely knows how to make good characters, like you said, Lud. So again, 10 out of 10 character. So going in order, Brigitte, 8 out of 10. Cute character. The design kind of holds her back a little bit. Dinorella, 9 out of 10. Pretty much, yeah, nostalgic classic. More style over substance, even if some of the style is a little off sometimes. But yeah, best version of Cinderella, hands down. And Edwina, 10 out of 10. Love the guy when he made Codename Kids Next Door, and he did a service. So that's going to be it.
Let's see, Matt, what would your picks be?
I'm going to go slightly out of order for the characters. Dinorella, I give an 8. He has by far my favorite design of all of the characters. The problem is the story is kind of minimal for characterization purposes, so that unfortunately holds her back a bit. I do like it, and I really wish that they had a bit more detail on her and her personality, but it's more just look at how cool this looks, look at how gorgeous this looks, and I do agree. That's why I rate her so highly for visuals more than anything else. Edwina, I hate to be the stick in the mud here, is an 8 as well. I love the character. She is my favorite of the characters. I love how they present her, how sweet she is. She has the most charm, and for as short as that book was, the most personality. Mo Williams did a fantastic job of bringing her to life. The issue is, and this isn't a knock against him, I've always viewed his particular art style as rather simplistic. He's using his Sheep in the Big City art style. I loved Sheep in the Big City for how smart and well written it was. The art was always okay, fun to look at, but it was the writing in it that sold that series, and this is kind of the same here. The art style is okay to good. There's nothing fantastic about it, particularly compared to the other two characters, which is what unfortunately brings her down to that same 8 as Dinorella. Brigitte is the best of both worlds. The art is fantastic. Former Disney animator. No, what a shock. Story, it's just Reluctant Dragon with a female dragon. Oh, the horror. Whatever will I do? It's only one of my favorite Disney stories of all time. However will I feel about this? Because it just looks so good and the characterization with her is so good, I end up at a 10 for her because, like I said, she is the best of both worlds. I wish the other two were on this level, for Dinorella had this level of character, or Edwina had this level of art, so that I could rate them as highly as well.
Yeah, I could definitely see where you're coming from, especially with the fact that Brigitte is such a well-defined character, and everything you said about the other two makes sense, but Brigitte really is one that I'm shocked they never tried making an animated short of her or something like that, because she really is amazing. Let's see, Shark, what would you give them?
Okay, so the first one we covered was Brigitte, and her. I mean, I don't like it. She's a cute design, and the whole story and character is cute, like with the moral and all of that. Yeah, I really like her, but as you mentioned it feels really similar to the Long Dragon. So I won't say that there's no originality, but there's a surprise factor that was lost because I already saw a very similar story before, so she did not bring me that much impact. Even though she was close, she ended up being a 9 out of 10. Then comes Dinorella, which is the weakest of the bunch, but I mean, by comparison of the other two, again, cool design, a nice art style, but it is the shortest one of the books we cover. All is the one with the least amount of words. It really just tells you the story of Cinderella, not many of character depth. It's just, oh, she wants to go, she got the dress from the fairy godmother, she met the prince, and then the prince found her, and cute story, but just the same story as always, just shorter and with dinosaurs and with a diner rather than a castle. But still, she's getting an 8. And then we got Edwina, which honestly, I guess our scores are gonna be the same, Lud, because I'm gonna go with a perfect score for 10. Because I really like the concept with it made with her. Like, she's a dinosaur that lives in the modern eras, but instead of having the Jurassic Park sequels, she's this very nice lady that bakes cookies, helps other people, spreads joy, and even the kid that pretty much wants to tell her, hey, you're dead. She's very nice to him and all of that. And even when she's faced with the fact and logic, she's just like, whatever, and goes on her merry way. And like we commented, that her expressions are fine. Her shock expression is funny. So yeah, she's honestly a perfect score.
Okay, wow, I was not expecting that. I guess this week we share the same brain cell, but let's see. Storm, what would you give them?
I'm gonna start with Brigitte. 8 out of 10 because I like everything in it. I just didn't really click for me, and I'm not gonna compare it to a Reluctant Dragon because I have not seen that. Yeah, but I do like the book. It was just not for me, and it was fine, I guess. It's an 8. Dinorella, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to give it a perfect score because I don't know, it clicks more to me. Maybe it's because it has a 50s style to it. It's dinosaurs. Dinorella has definitely my favorite design out of the 3, and everything in it seems fine. Also, the visuals made it more funnier to me than Brigitte. She give me a couple of chuckles. Dinorella make me laugh hard. And finally, Edwina, given I almost spent this podcast wishing it was kind of a different story, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Mostly because it is good. It is good. I like the twist. I like how she doesn't care that she's extinct. Well, her kind is basically non-existent. But I just thought it was about a dinosaur who didn't know she was extinct and people questioning why she isn't extinct. And it's just one person actually questions that, but he doesn't really question it. So, and Rita has my favorite personality out of the 3. So, Dinorella has the favorite design. Edwina has the favorite personality.
All really varying scores all around, which I think just shows how popular these characters are, that none of them got a score lower than 8 out of 10, which shows just how popular they are. It's really good to see that these book characters, despite being more obscure, they still continue to live on and be popular. So big thumbs up to all 3 writers and illustrators. You all did a fantastic job. And yeah, you definitely should continue with this, because if you haven't checked out these books, definitely check them out. But that's going to be it for this week. If you have any questions, or if you want to suggest other children's books for us to talk about, you can feel free to email us at fierydiscourse@outlook.com. Visit us at Twitter at twitter.com/fierydiscourse. Visit us at Blue Sky at Blue Sky Fiery Discourse. Be sure to subscribe to the Fiery Discourse YouTube channel and subscribe to the playlist. Like and hit the bell icon. Leave a comment. Any all comments are appreciated. Next week, we are going to be talking about the 2015 Clangers episode, Dragon Day. It's time to return to the land of whistling pink stop-motion mice and soup-giving dragons that babble, because this is going to be a lot of fun. We talked about the 1970 Clangers on the podcast a few years ago, and that was such a charming, well-made, and fun show. Will this reboot from the BBC be just as good as the original? We'll have to see. But until then, thank you so much for listening, and take care.
Later, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Oh,
Adios. See you all next week.